for everyone coming. I so well. Not about me. Just like a massive thank you to Rebecca and Alex and Henry and for bringing me up and giving me a chance to have a little discussion with you guys, and for putting on my Happy Benny movie with my man Dick White. That is, it'll be a challenge to watch it through in this space, but it's a visual display, and of course it's online for anyone who wants to view it. It's available, Happy Benny, or Benny, it's the Happy Good, which I thought was just a win-win. I have something, a really important idea that I really want to discuss with you guys. As a way of introduction, I want to explain the suit. This is the suit that I photographed when I first did the Happy Benny, the Beneficiary's office, and we got a really beautiful photograph in the Dominion newspaper on pretty much the front page. The second page was the big show. It said, artist paints noble picture of the doll, and it had me at the desk looking kind of a corporate, crazy guy. I got this suit bought for me by my uncle when I was in 1997, when I came this close from becoming a Wall Street broker in New York. And the shoes too. This is like $1,000 back in 1997. They were quite well off, and I was a struggling artist, and they were quite well off, as I said, and they had family connection, and they were going to put me into the biz. I decided to take the suit and run. I didn't run it. I couldn't do it, and it was the reason why I couldn't do it, because I was arsed. I had all this shit in my head, and I wasn't going to give it up to go make money, because it takes a lot of time and effort to get all that shit in your head. I didn't want to move it out off the table and bring in a lot of figures and exploitation very much. So, I try and do a broad range of ideas. I try and do a broad range of practices. I'm not just an artist that wants to do this, want to do that. I want to be a holistic kind of person. I want to be specialized. I want to be divided and conquered. The market doesn't like that, but living likes that. I'm living really well. I don't have a job. Can't find it incredibly hard to get a job, I think, because of the publicity that I got in that, but I don't want to complain too much. But there's woofing. I'm a woofer. I mow lawns, I dig gardens, and for that I get free board and food. And so there are ways of dropping out of society and landing pretty high. I have a massive studio and time to do things. When I did the Happy Benny, it was obviously a media sensation. It was very controversial, and we got slammed. But we brought the ideas to the public using a very simple device, and that was show who pays your bills. We showed that I was funded by Creative New Zealand and WIN. Now the public supposedly didn't like that, but what they really showed is that they were engaged. They wanted to know where their money was going, and that it was going to me, and I was doing this. Now whether they disliked it or disliked it, you'll never really get in the media, because the media has to have a good guy and a bad guy, and they need to sell papers, and so it's got to be sensational. But the weight of doing an idea like this, exposing my financial basis, is incredibly beneficial to broad society, because they get to see that their money, the taxpayers' money, is being used to fund delicate, dangerous ideas that are trying to get the wheels of society moving on all levels of society. Now, this idea that I really want to discuss, and we can perhaps discuss it as it happens, but what I'm really concerned about is here in the university environment, we have artists, and now these artists are university professors, and they do important work as artists and as university professors. But what I'm really concerned with is that they're not letting the public know that they are actually university professors, actually employees on behalf of the public to do a job, and that is to be a critic and conscience of society. Now that's a legal definition of what a university does. You have to accept the role as a critic and conscience of society. You can't do that unless the public know that if you're Michael Kofi or Ed Al or any of these professors, if you don't tell the public straight up that you are a university professor, your salary is paid by the public. Now, that's not a popular idea, and there's a lot of various reasons why that's not being done. But the problems that it's causing because it's not being done are enormous. It's creating a vacuum of perception out there in the public that there is no translation, there's no intelligentsia, there's no one engaging with these delicate and difficult ideas at a societal level. And that's causing people like me who are not part of the institution to be absolutely crushed by the system when we bring up these delicate and strange ideas. And so if there's not a standard established by the people who are actually paid to do the job, they're actually accepting money, they're actually accepting the power and the privilege to do the hard job that is to withstand the public scorn of accepting public money and doing wacky art. If they can't stand up to that, what chance have the rest of us who don't get that money to do our thing and have some chance of it being understood on a broad public platform? Does that make sense? Does anyone, can I clarify any of that idea to anyone? Want me to repeat anything? Does anyone agree with what I just said?
What do you want the expert architects to do to make their practice
transparent? Yeah, what would it take for an artist that is actually an employee of the university to be transparent about that? How about just be proud of the fact that you have a job, that you have a very important job, a very powerful job that you're doing on behalf of the rest of us, to be a critic and conscious society. I'm not talking about their work. I think the artists by default are doing that. I'm not talking about being more critical, making particular types of work. That's not what's at stake here. It's promoting the fact that you are employed to do that job. So I want to see, as a taxpayer, I want to see what I did. I publicized that I was a beneficiary, that I was getting credit and stealing money, and I was making art that was doing dangerous, critical ideas about society. Why can't they do that? Why can't they say, hi, I'm going to Venice, and I work for Auckland University. Straight up. That should be a point of pride. They should have some respect and some celebration in the fact that they're doing a good job, which they are. They actually are doing the job. They're just not promoting it to the public. And by not letting the public know, they're not inviting the argument, they're not getting the discussion happening at a broad enough level that really needs to be happening. And unfortunately, you just have to weather that storm of stupidity. Oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do a dunny and a goat or whatever. You have to weather the cheap shot to get penetration, to get all the ideas that are attached to a goat. No, it's a donkey. There's a donkey and a tulip. You have to weather the storm, the brunt of the sensational aspect of anything, so that the rest of your ideas, like truck and trailer, can actually pass through the layers of society. They're not doing that, and that's a real problem.
So why do you think they're not?
Why are they not doing that? Well, really, we can speculate over why they're not doing it. There's obviously a huge transition going on, or has been, it's almost complete really, of universities moving from a social responsibility position to a completely corporate responsibility kind of model. But, I think the law's been around since 1989. Okay? It's the law, it's in the Education Act of 1989, it's online, it's very, very clear. It says you have to be a university, you have to have 5 characteristics. And if you don't have all of those 5 characteristics, you cannot call yourself a university. You're a polytech. It has these definitions. And so the fact that it's been very clear that to be a university you have to accept the role as critic and conscious of society. I think it's not really about, for me it's not about why, it's about start doing it. Because the law says you should be doing it, so why aren't you doing it? Just do it. You're accepting the money, you've got the power, you've got the privilege. Just promote the fact that you're a university lecturer. Just do it. That shouldn't be, it will be hard, it will create ripples. It will create, it should strengthen.
But so like, Campbell Jones, who's supposed to be lecturer, he wrote a thing about the student protest last week.
Yep.
For the Herald, and sent it to the Herald. And then the university got in touch with him and said that he wasn't allowed to publish it with the Herald because it would like bring the university into disrepute.
Right.
And then the Herald, and he said he would publish it anyway, but the Herald wouldn't publish it. So it's like, he was doing that, he's saying, I'm a university lecturer, blah, blah, blah. The university wanted him to do it.
Well, that's exactly the fight that should be happening in a public way. So that's happening behind doors. Artists are generally out in the open. We're engaged with an audience. So I think that there's also the fact that there's there's mystery around what an artist does and what it means. For example, when you're writing something, you're hitting certain targets, certain points. If you're making bookends that are elephants, it's a little more obscure about what the ramifications of that are. So there's a lot more room in the artists to get away with the fact that they are radical by default. They are critics and conscious of society by default, just because their work is not overtly saying this or that. Whereas perhaps with his writing, and I haven't read it, I don't know, when you're making an overt political statement, your boss will have a problem with it, but that needs to also happen. And I'm saying that as artists, as the professors and the artists, they're the symbols, they're the leaders of how we see things. Yeah? And if they're not leading, if they're not doing it, how is this guy going to survive being censored, pretty much? If there isn't a precedent set somewhere, and I think it is up to our artists to set the precedent. I think the art schools are, by default, radical institutions, and they need to embrace that radicalism or have it erased. And it's being erased.
Art's somewhere where art becoming a commodity, though, is something that's been happening for a long time. And it's clear it's not so much of this is an institutional problem. It doesn't mean the individual shouldn't step up, but it's clearly something that's beyond just the individual, where the people who are actually becoming lecturers aren't going to be the ones that are going to do something that's actually radical. And I would argue that just because you're doing conceptual art or something like elephants and bookends or whatever, doesn't make you radical by default.
I think it does in the broader public sphere.
I think it just makes them less likely to engage with it and more likely to not worry about it. Whereas,
but if you don't care about art anyway, but if you care about a certain privileged group of people in society that are getting public money to do crazy art, then at least that's an opportunity for you to engage with that thing that you don't like. And I think the fact that we're not even offering people the opportunity to articulate what they don't like is a problem. Okay? Because it creates a vacuum that as if there's nothing happening. As if it's all magically happening, supported by some magical market. And it's not. We're funding for it. We're funding it. You guys, taxpayers, funding. Like a real estate bubble. Yeah.
I'm not convinced that maybe particularly with Michael Perpetuated by that,
Yeah.
I feel like he is quite clear about his role as a teacher.
Yeah.
That feeds back into his work really
No,
clearly.
no, I'm not. Again, I don't want to be sucked into individual cases of work and what the work means and what is that. I'm talking about the presentation, the media presentation, the way that they meet the brutal front of the public reaction. The general stance is that they are artists that happen to be working in universities, as if that's a lesser bad thing, as if it's just an accident that they happen to be ending up. I'm just an artist, but I happen to have this job on site. That's not good enough. The job is really hard and really important. To be a critic in conscious society, it's full on, and you have to be tough. You have to be really strong. You have to be able to articulate yourself under pressure. Now, if these people are teachers and are leaders, and they're not tough enough, they're not strong enough, then what kind of product are they teaching us? A soft product, a product that's not good enough for an international realm, let alone our realm. So I'm asking the Parakophites of the future, and I'm asking Michael Parakophi to say on the radio or on your television interview, the first fucking thing you should say is, I'm a fucking university professor and I'm proud of that. I don't think he hides it. I'm not, again, this is not a particular individual case.
But you're using
Well, I'm referring exactly to what he's saying, but there's a difference between mentioning it and it being in the facility of biography or milling around in the area.
I don't think any of them hide
It's like the responsibility to call truth, power, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The university will have to.
Yeah, it's actually calling the university on its own principles. Right? It wants to be transparent and it wants to have independent scholarship. It wants to have authority based on scholarship. It wants to have public accountability. It wants to, all of these things matter to someone, to somebody. Well, then it needs to be more. I think what you're saying is fine, but is it your opinion that the general population out there has the impression that there is a paid-for intelligentsia in this country?
Are you talking about
I'm talking about a state-funded group of employees that have been empowered by law to be critics and conscience of this society.
Would you not say the problem is with the idea of critic and conscience of society? That's an idea that comes out of positive philosophy, in which we can just observe and criticise what we can see. It would seem to me that art's about showing us what we can't yet see.
Well, for me, I'm not interested in what art is or what isn't, or what the defined role of critic and conscience is, because I think that has to be acted, it has to be done. And what I'm pulling up on is the technicality that we don't even get to see them even trying to be critic and conscious society, because no one gets to know that they're actually paid to do a job. What the public gets to see is that they're artists, independent.
What about art students? Should they?
Well, no. For me, the very crucial connection there is that if you're an artist who's making work, whose work feeds back into the kudos, the power, the strength, the financial system of the university, then surely that work should be acknowledged as part of the institution of the work, and therefore should be acknowledged that that work is part of your job.
Is it so that you can be a real independent artist?
No, it's to clarify where the money comes from. Because I'm not a real independent artist. I'm bankrolled by other people. I have obligations to my partner's parents who are looking after us. We're all attached to things. We all want to be this distinctly artist. But to get to that, you actually have to start with where you actually are. And a lot of us are tagged with financial obligations, social tags like white male artist, or I'm a feminist artist, or I'm a, we've all got these tags, and I think it's unfair that the academic artists get to assume the pure singular of artists when they're actually not. They're actually being paid to do a job, and that job is really hard and really important.
Wait. It's your claim that we should just be proud of what our jobs are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is my problem as well.
It's slightly scary, man.
What?
Like, they pay for like a certain number of hours,
Yeah.
and then once those hours are up, I can print beer and hang out with you.
Yeah, but like, I don't get to get paid to do your job.
So I don't do my job.
No, but like, why can't you, when you do your job and you receive money for it, and the university gets its funding for it and things, why can't you be proud of that? So why can't you tell the public that when you do that job, that you're working as part of the university?
I don't think it's like we live in an anti-intellectual society.
Well, it's not going to change, mate, unless you do your job.
I know it.
Yeah.
Well, that's my kind of problem is that but I'd rather talk about the ideas. I feel like I'd rather think of the shit away. Listen to what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that's again talking about what your particular work is about. And it's like, that's not, I'm not interested. Everyone's being a critic of conscious society. It's just that some of us are getting paid for it. So I'd like to know who those people are when they do their job. Like, man, when you get paid to do a job, there are certain expectations of that. You have to actually achieve the job.
Distinction between like art students and art students also arguably